Takes time to start the event.
Starting here.
Yeah.
Right. Hello and welcome to this, our very first conversation for the fall series of the Wisdom Factory. We're starting our fourth year of more or less weekly conversations, which we call Conversations That Matter, and also Conscious Aging, two different series.
And sometimes there's also Women Matters, once a week, a conversation among women.
Okay. But our show today is titled, Is Life Extension Possible? So by introduction, I'm Mark Davenport. I'm here with
Heidi Hörnlein, or Adelheid Hörnlein, as I like.
And you have some things to say about how the show will work?
Yes. I am not sure where you are watching this for now. If you are on YouTube, that's fine, but you cannot do the comments there because they're shut off. If you are on Webinar Jam, that is even finer. You can leave your comments there, and in the end of the show, you can raise your hand when you have a question and speak with our special guest, which we will present in a short while. Yeah, and then we have also streaming. I hope it works. You never know with these tech things. We have the Wisdom Factory, and when you click on live streaming, you should go to the event page for today's event, and there you'll find everything. You should find the live streaming, and you will also find infos about our guests and books and whatever, introductions. And later you will find the replay here and also the timestamps, which Mark will write so that you find what we will be talking about later on, what we have talked about in what minute of the show.
All right.
Okay.
So finally, we might be able to get to our guest. We have a very special guest today, but that's because we have a very special topic. And Nicola Bagalà is a youngish, from our point of view, native Italian who now finds himself living in Finland. And so a quick question might be, why does a younger person find himself interested in a topic today of extending the human lifespan far past, the biblical 80, which for centuries has been sort of about all we could hope to expect for.
It seems to be normal that we older people think about that, but maybe it's better to think about it earlier. We might avoid some mistakes. So we will ask him.
All right. And so I think we might be able to maybe begin with just that question. How did you get interested in this topic, Nicola?
Yes, well, I became interested during a time in my life when I started questioning a few choices. I was even younger, of course. I was 27. And I was a bit concerned with the passing of time at that time because I was afraid that, I was maybe a bit stuck with, what I was doing, where I was. And I thought that, maybe this is what it's going to be like forever if I don't change it. And that was just, the trigger. But then, as this pushed me to think about aging in general, I guess at that time, actually, my grandmother was about to die. So I had, a reason to think about this. I started to think that, aging is not a thing that concerns old people only, because we're all getting there, right? So now I am 27, or rather at the time I was 27, but eventually I, would grow older and, reach, 60, 70, 80, whatever. And so, the ill health of old age would eventually concern me as well. And it would, actually it would be a problem even before then, because my parents would, of course, become elderly before me, and I would have to deal with that. So that's how it started. That's the event that pushed me to think about this kind of thing.
So what are you doing normally in your life? I mean, I don't think you will do that the whole day, thinking about older age and how we can live longer.
Well, not exactly. I mean, it's not a job, not at the moment. So apart from that, I recently graduated in mathematics, and I've been studying coding for a while, programming. And I've been thinking what I want to do. I'm actually thinking that next year already I might resume studying already, because I got interested in biology. So I have half a mind of going back to academia, because I feel that that's kind of an environment that I like more than your typical 9-to-5 job. I mean, academia is 9 to 5, all right, but in a way it is not typical. So I'm thinking about that. And so I also study biology on my own, just to prepare myself for that moment. And I do spend some time thinking about aging and actually advocating for rejuvenation biotechnology, because I'm not doing it alone. There are other people. So I actually have the chance of actually working on it. There are projects going on, and we work together with some people. We'll eventually get to talk about them. So it actually does occupy a decent part of my day. And even when I'm not actively working on it, I do find myself thinking about it. It's sort of a passion, if you will. So I, go back to it mentally.
Mm-hmm. Well, I have a suspicion that you may be thinking about it in different ways than most people think about it. Because I think most people look forward to, these later decades, the 70s, 80s, 90s, with some concern, some dread, fearing perhaps some kind of dementia or some sort of progressive organic condition that eventually is going to do them in, or that they fear will do them in anyway. So, and I think from what I've read of your writing, that you have a rather different view of what we could expect if we could look at things a bit differently.
Well, yes, let's put it like this. As things stand, if we just let aging alone the way it is, then I would say the fear is largely justified, because, we know that as we get older, we get sicker. Some people more, some people less. It really depends on how lucky you are, if we want to put it like that. But, we all get sick, at least to an extent. And, the fact that eventually we die kind of proves it, because nobody ever died because they were too healthy. So, that kind of, makes it a really moot question. It's settled.
So somebody died was always healthy. So, it's not a necessity that you get sick before you die.
It depends on what you mean by healthy, because even if you think of somebody who, for example, died in their sleep peacefully because their heart stopped. Their heart didn't stop because it didn't have anything better to do, but it stopped for a reason, and most likely, as far as I'm aware, that the body essentially ran out of pacemaker cells that are what your body uses to make, actually your brain uses to signal your heart that it should beat. And if an organ like your heart is running out of cells, I would think that qualifies as a disease. Something that is not exactly the best for you. Like if your organs start losing parts, that's not fun. I mean, it's not something that I look forward to.
Yeah, and I think you brought up something that we could expand upon here. You talked about running out of pacemaker cells. Now this, I'm sure, is something that few people have thought of. Pacemaker cells? What are we talking about?
I mean, I don't know the biological details. I only know that they are cells that, signal your heart that it should beat. They're essentially they're the mean that your brain uses to communicate with your heart and tell it, beat, otherwise we're going to die, that kind of thing. And as our cells, in all tissues, I think pretty much all tissues eventually run out with time. That's why we have things like sarcopenia, or in general, loss of organ tissue, muscle tissue. That's why it happens, because we run out of cells. And, first you have, you're not as efficient or as healthy as you used to be, but you're still alive because you still have enough cells to function. But when you hit a critical threshold, then you stop functioning. And even the process is not fun. So, it's not a good thing for you. which is why, you know, I'm sort of against aging in this sense. But I recall that you were. Yes, go ahead, please.
Yeah, so you're looking at aging itself as a disease of sorts.
Yes, even though that is sort of, it's really a matter of definition, because, you know, disease is not an absolute concept. It needs to be defined. So depending on how you define it, you know, anything could be a disease or could not be. Some people tend to think that aging is rather a set of diseases. And I sort of agree with that, with that definition, even though we're just nitpicking here. And as a matter of fact, there is a famous paper called The Hallmarks of Aging that was published in 2013 in the academic journal Cell, that essentially describes, indeed, the hallmarks of aging. That is, those processes that lead to the pathologies of old age. But the thing is, what these processes that I don't know, make you more weak, or, you know, more susceptible to diseases and that kind of stuff, you know, there is really no difference between the diseases of aging, you know, as Alzheimer's disease or cancer and stuff like that, and the process that lead to them. Like, they're essentially they're the same thing, except that when you reach a stage in which you have Alzheimer's disease or cancer or heart disease or stuff like that, it means that a process of damage accumulation that has been going on throughout your entire life has reached a critical threshold. You know, it's got to the point where it's too much for your body to tolerate, and that is the point when you get a disease. But as this process goes on throughout life, you know, it's cumulative. Initially, the damage that you carry around is not enough for you to be sick. You know, when you are 30 or 40 years old, you do have some age-related damage, as you know, it is called. You do carry it around, but it is low enough that it does not cause pathology. Eventually, when it reaches a certain threshold that generally arrives, I don't know, when you're 80 or something, it really depends on the people, then that's when you might get a disease. And most of the times it does happen. There are some relatively lucky people, as we said, that do not really experience significant age-related diseases, as in, you know, they're completely demented or anything like that, but they are weaker, their immune system is weaker, they don't see very well, they don't hear very well. You know, it's not as bad as if you were bedridden the entire time, but it could be better anyway.
So, what
do you want to say?
Do you think if we could avoid this sort of disease, then we would be able to live, let's say, eternally, or do some procedures? I have.
Oh my God, not eternally.
No. I have in mind the old pictures of the Jungbrunnen in German, the well where you enter as old and you come out as young.
The fountain of youth.
Fountain of youth, yeah.
Well, that depends. I mean, the idea is that as you get older, your probability of dying increases with time because of aging. I don't remember the exact numbers. I think it was something like after age 25 or 35 even, I'm not sure. Every 8 years, your probability of dying doubles. And it starts as very low. You know, when you're just born, these days, typically, I guess it is very low, but, you know, eventually it grows larger and larger. And if aging was out of the equation, in principle, if you're lucky enough, you might never die, but that really depends on a number of factors. You know, there is no way to promise anyone that, oh, you're going to live this much, or, you know, you're never going to. You can't promise it, but on the other hand, you can't even say that, no, that's impossible. That's a different matter anyway, because the point of rejuvenation, because that's what we're talking about, is not really making you live forever, or it's not longevity. The point is health, because, you know, if you're sick, you probably do not really want to live a long time as a sick person, especially if the disease is very serious or debilitating. But, if you're healthy, I don't see why not. I mean, there are people who come up with all sorts of reasons why they would not want to live a very long time. And, they're very much theoretical reasons, like they think they're going to be bored for sure at some point, or the future is definitely going to be super grim because why not? Why shouldn't it be grim? And so there are people who think this, and in my opinion, everyone should be free to live however long they see fit. So if they really think that when they're going to be 150, they will not want to be alive anymore, that's their choice. I didn't question that. But there's a difference between that and opposing the creation of a technology because you think you wouldn't want to use it. Well, don't. Other people might.
Technology. What technology are you talking about?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Well, yeah, I think we kind of started in the middle of the topic, so maybe we should start from the beginning. So the whole idea, as I have understood it, I would like to clarify at this point that, I am essentially repeating what other people who are more expert than I am say. So, I'm not an expert or a doctor. I'm just repeating what others say. So keep that in mind. According to, the best of our knowledge about aging, essentially, aging is the product of, as I was saying, a process of damage accumulation that is due to your metabolism. Metabolism is nothing more than an intricate set of chemical reactions that happen in your body and keep you alive. And as these reactions go on, they essentially have side effects. They produce, byproducts, junk, to use a sort of an inappropriate term, but, let's call it that, some kind of garbage that is not properly disposed of throughout life. And the good thing is that for a really long time, this damage is not enough to cause pathologies or any troubles. The body is set up to tolerate a certain amount of this damage. But eventually, if it just keeps piling up and nothing clears it up, it will accumulate to a point where the body cannot tolerate it anymore and it will start falling apart. And depending on how you want to categorize these damages, you can subdivide them into 7 or 9 categories. And the idea is that what we might be able to do in order to prevent this damage from reaching a pathological threshold is periodically repairing it, so that, when you are 70 years old, say, you undergo certain treatments that are able to rejuvenate you back to, say, when you were 50. Say that we have therapies that are able to rejuvenate you by 20 years. That would mean that you would be 70, chronologically speaking, but biologically you would only be 50, for example, which is already better. The health of a typical 50-year-old generally is better than that of a 70-year-old. Of course, it depends on the lifestyle that the 50-year-old has, but as a rule of thumb. And the reason why we would want to do it this way is that tweaking metabolism so that we would prevent it from causing damage in the first place is much harder and far beyond our abilities at the moment. There is no way you could hope to tweak it so that it would not cause damage and it would not kill you at the same time, because we're not that smart yet. We're not that good. I mean, I tend to think that maybe in the future, far future, we might be able to actually mess around with metabolism so that it doesn't cause any problem at all and just keeps you alive. But that's just my conjecture, my guess. At the moment, that's far beyond what we can do.
Yeah.
So the technology that you asked about would indeed be rejuvenation biotechnologies. That is, therapies that are able to repair the damage that the body does to itself as a side effect of its own operations.
Let me ask you a question. So far,
Sure.
We did a lot of spiritual work to overcome cancer, and there were moments of cases of remission of cancer by people who really went into their psychological depth. You are proposing one integral theory we call the outside, the right-hand quadrants approach. So from from the outside with the technology work on the body, while these spiritual practices are a left-hand quadrant side, that's from the inside. Mm-hmm. So is it true, or do you combine these things?
I'm not clear what you mean by spiritual side. I mean, like, if you're talking about, I don't know, souls and stuff like that, I must confess that I'm not a believer. So to me, the problem is not there. But the thing is that even if there were such a thing, first of all, is this what you're talking about, or am I just talking nonsense?
If you said souls, no, we're not talking about the same thing.
Okay, what are we talking about?
Okay. But the difference between inner and outer approaches to health is that typically medicine looks at the objective body, its composition, what goes on, the chemistry, what can be manipulated, what can be removed, and in some cases, what can be added even, and also the systems that enable those things to happen. So it's sort of the individual, but also the social aspect of medicine. And what I think you were mentioning as the inner work is one's own ability to look within and do what and understand what's going on with their body,
and to influence the inner process.
Influence it by self-knowledge, and also not just the individual, but also in the social context in which they operate, in their relationships, in the health of their public life.
Yeah, and realizing that many illnesses are created by conflict, inner conflict, by all sorts of problems which people face, by depression, for instance, which are caused by several reasons. So
just a horrible family life.
By disappointment, continuous disappointment, for instance, or whatever, some loss of houses, which now happens in California, can create some terrible situation where people are, and don't lose their energy, let's say, so that the body cannot cope anymore in the same way as it could before. And it's the body-owned mechanisms for self-healing. So you don't talk about that, is it right?
Well, the way I see it, even what you're talking about is essentially, it's still part of the body. It's not something different. But my understanding is that what you're saying is that there might be things happening in life that, like depression or things that really drag you down, that would make it difficult to cope, even if you undergo rejuvenation therapies. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, you bet.
Well, yeah, I agree entirely. I mean, like, you can be 30 years old and be utterly depressed and, not feeling like leaving your bed because of that. And I don't think that, a shot of rejuvenation, so to speak, would take your depression away, because depression is not, as far as I'm aware, depression is not an age-related disease in the sense that age-related damage actually causes it. Mm-hmm. So, might well be fully rejuvenated and still have, be depressed or have other psychological issues. That's a different matter. But the thing is, definitely being sick with age-related diseases is not going to make your depression or your spiritual problems any better, just adding on top of them.
For sure.
So if anything, you could at least improve one thing, maybe I am 90 and I'm depressed, but even though I'm 90 and depressed, I have the body of a 30-year-old. That's not so bad as could be. So that's the way I see it.
Okay, so talk a little bit about these therapies. I've never heard of that. So,
there have been animal experiments. I mean, rather famous ones with rats who seem to benefit from treatments that keep them young much longer than normal.
Yes. So essentially, the reason why you haven't heard about these therapies is that they're not available yet. We're early research stage. Yeah, I mean, had they been available, I suppose they would be much more popular by now, but they're not. The thing is, some researchers think that we are within striking distance. Within a few decades of research, we might have first generation therapies that would allow a certain amount of rejuvenation, so to speak, assuming that enough money is poured on the research and that the research is actually carried out.
Mm-hmm.
We don't get it anymore. Yes. If you have to wait 30 years,
too late. Never mind. Not interested.
Too bad.
It depends. I would not jump to conclusions because, as I was saying before, the damages that would need to be addressed are several. There are like 7 or 9 categories of damage, right? And some of these are easier to fix, some are more difficult, and in some areas there's been more progress, and in some other areas there has been less progress. This means that some therapies are bound to arrive sooner. And the thing is, as these damages all interact with each other and make each other worse, if you take one out of the equation, things are going to improve, even though not super significantly. I've heard estimates by experts saying that if you were able to snap your fingers and just remove heart disease entirely, or cancer even, I don't remember, just make them disappear, the average lifespan would go up by just 3 or 4 years, because the other causes of death, of age-related death, would still be around. So you would get a benefit, but it would be only marginal. In order to reach a point where the length of your life is not determined by how old you are, we would need to get rid of all of them. But the thing is, any little bit helps. So I would say that, I mean, I'm not going to say who's going to make it and who is not going to make it, because frankly, I have no reason to think that I will certainly make it because I'm 33. A lot of things could go wrong. There is no way to know for a fact. All we know is that there is a decent chance that within 20 to 25 years, the first batch, so to speak, of rejuvenation therapies might be out. And so people who are alive today might benefit from it. But of course, nothing is certain because you never know. But, I think it's worth the effort. It's not too far away. If I told you in 200 years we're going to be there, I would understand most people are going to be like, yeah, why would I care? 200 years from now is, too long for anyone who's alive today. But even that, to be honest, is a bit short-sighted, because if you think about other global issues that are not aging, say global warming or other stuff like that, odds are that people who are alive today will not live. If rejuvenation doesn't become a thing, people who are alive today probably will not see the worst of global warming, because it would take, decades to actually become a very, very serious problem. And yet we are told all the time that we should think about future generations. Maybe we will not have a problem with global warming because we will, will die before it actually gets critical. But our children and nephews and whatnot will have this problem. So we should work today so that they will not have to bear with the consequence of this problem. And I think this is the same for aging. Maybe we will not make it to see the end of aging. Maybe I will not make it, and I'm 33. But people who will come after might be spared this problem if we worked on it today. So it's a humanitarian thing, really. Of course, I would like to make it myself. I would like my parents to make it. I would like everyone who is alive today, even people whom I do not like, to make it, to that day. But that's something that no one can promise, not yet at least, because there is still a certain margin of uncertainty.
Well, I'm wondering, you're speaking about therapies that are being investigated, but they're not public yet.
But still, how do they work? Where is the
Can you give us some clues about the direction they're taking?
Right. So a hot topic these days is that of senolytics. Senolytics they're a class of drugs that have a particular ability, so to speak. they're used to target and destroy so-called senescent cells. Now, what are senescent cells? A cell becomes senescent essentially when it stops doing what it's supposed to do. It's not functioning anymore, it's not able to replicate anymore, and it just sits there and does nothing particularly useful. And actually, as far as I am aware, it also emits it produces a cocktail of toxic signals for other cells that causes them to malfunction and also enter senescence themselves. Now, generally, these cells are disposed of by the immune system. Our immune system actually does a lot of things that you wouldn't think of. It actually also helps against cancer. It eats up cancer cells and all the kind of stuff. But a few senescent cells manage to evade this. They escape this fate, essentially, because the immune system is not perfect either. And on top of that, as you get older, your immune response is lower. So, these things just keep accumulating. And the problem is, as that senescent cells accumulates, as I was saying, like with all other kinds of damages, they tend to cause problems. For example, they have a role in arthritis, they also contribute in cancer and a lot of other pathologies that I cannot even remember. And what senolytics would do is essentially seek and destroy them selectively. So you destroy the senescent cells, but not other cells. You would not harm other cells that are still functioning. So by doing this, you would reverse one of the type of damage that wreak havoc in your body, essentially. Mm-hmm. And of course, one has to be careful with this because biology is all about trade-offs. As a matter of fact, senescent cells are not just villains. They do have a function in the body. There was a conference that I watched on YouTube by an expert. It was actually talking about rejuvenation biotechs. And the professor was explaining that senescent cells do play positive roles, like they help in wound healing, and actually they even have an anti-cancer action, but only so when they are in moderate amount. As long as you don't have too many of them, they're good for you. But when there are too many, they start having the opposite effect. This is what I say when I mean it's a trade-off. Essentially, senescent cells are one of those things that give you benefits as long as you're young, because they keep bad things like cancer away. They help keeping it away so that, you might make it to reproductive age and thus spread your genes. But unfortunately,
So in effect, they stimulate the immune system in moderation.
I wouldn't know that. I mean, as far as I know, no, it's not a matter of stimulating the immune system. I don't know if they play a role in that sense. As said, I know I'm not a biologist, so I don't know that much into detail. But I do know that up to a point, they're useful. But when there are too many, they start being a problem. This is why you want to clear some of them, not all of them. But when there are too many, they start doing the opposite of what they're supposed to do, so to speak. So like, for example, if they normally help with wound healing, they actually make wound healing more difficult when there are too many. This is one of the reasons why. Yeah, that's why when you...
I have to insert a personal note here. Just a month ago, I fell off my bicycle and wounded both hands quite severely. You can see a little bit of damage remaining. There were some stitches here, a few punti, as they say in Italian. And the other one still has a scab, tiny remaining scab. But my hands were a mess, And now, a month later, they're completely functional. No broken skin anywhere. A little ragtag dry skin hanging on. So
why do you say that?
Oh, I must have the right number of senescent cells. Not too many, but enough.
It's difficult to say. It depends. It depends a lot on people, because some people are, they have a better genetic makeup, and so even when they're older, they're still better off than other people of their age. It really depends. It's a really complicated network of interactions, as far as I'm aware.
I'm aware of that, sure. But I was just happy to be back together in a month's time.
Yes, that's good. Yeah. But anyway, to keep answering your question, so senolytics are a very hot topic because in the past few years, the scientific world essentially went from a certain amount of skepticism about whether or not you can remove them or if it is useful to actually starting clinical trials, because some senolytics have been tested in mice by a company called Unity Biotechnologies, if I'm not mistaken, and they had interesting results. Like they managed to prolong the lifespan of mice by 30%, I think 25-30%, which is a lot for a mouse. And not only the lifespan, the mice were healthier for a longer time. It's not like they were older for longer, they were younger for longer. The pathologies of age came later on. And this was obtained just by reversing one of the factors. They didn't touch the others. So it is promising. And as far as I'm aware, this year, like by the end of this year, or maybe the beginning of next one, they're starting human clinical trials because they're figuring out that, this might be worth testing. The results might be great.
At this point, I want to interfere a moment because there's a comment from Markus Dieterle, and I think that's very interesting, and you might say something to that. He says, this targeting of the bad cells seems difficult. My father actually died because of a defect in his immune system, which caused a constant overproduction of beta cells that normally destroy damaged cells. After a while, they started to attack healthy cells as well, which in his case destroyed the cells in his lung.
Well,
so the question is the regulation of these processes. How is?
Yes. So my understanding is that, if I'm not mistaken, the commenter said that it was an immune system problem, right? Like the immune system went.
The cells who normally would be used to destroy the bad cells then became so aggressive that they destroyed even the good cells.
But here we're talking about a different thing. If it's the immune system going berserk, that's an autoimmune disease, and I would guess, and it's a different thing. Like the immune system does deal with senescent cells on its own naturally, but the way we would do it, as far as my knowledge goes, is not by using further the immune system, but rather having drugs that are fine-tuned to target specific cells. And as a matter of fact, there are a few approaches, the details of which I do not know because, like I said, I'm not a bench scientist in this sense. But there are different ways of targeting them with precision. And indeed, precision has been the main concern. You want to hit only certain cells and not just indiscriminately any cell. And I suppose this is a moment as good as any to mention lifespan.io, and the Life Extension Advocacy Foundation, which is an organization that I work with as a volunteer, because they had a crowdfunding project. Actually, they had a couple of them about senescent cells, indeed about different methods of targeting them and selectively destroy them. And I remember very clearly that the researchers on the explanation page in the videos made a big deal about fine-tuning the drug so that it does only what it is supposed to do and nothing more. Unfortunately, I'm not able to tell you how that would work because it's not my field of expertise, at least not for now. You never know. But for example, if you went to have a look at the page, at the project page, or maybe even got in touch with the researchers, the community is very open. They might be able to give you details. Like every now and again, they update us on their on their progress, so there might be news about what they're doing and how they're doing it. So I guess that to answer, yeah.
I know the organization you're speaking of, but could you repeat it for the sake of the audience?
Yes. So the Life Extension Advocacy Foundation, or LEAF for short, is a charity based in the States whose purpose is essentially educating the people to the problem of aging and explaining to everyone that there is a chance of putting an end to age-related diseases if we support the research. So what we do is outreach and education, writing articles to advocate and explain what would be the benefit of rejuvenation biotechnologies, addressing the concerns of the people, and we run crowdfunding projects so that we can fund the research, so that researchers that have a project in the pipeline been waiting for years, for example, don't have to wait for grants or rich philanthropists, because everyone who wants to can contribute, pretty much like you would do on Kickstarter or Patreon, that kind of stuff that finances YouTube channels, for example. We do it for aging research, for the pathologies of old age.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So that's something that your viewers might want to have a look at. Maybe you could have a link or something in the description.
Oh, sure.
That is in the website.
That's why I was asking for it, so we can be sure in the timestamps to draw people's attention to this. Yeah.
What I'm wondering, if there is somebody in the audience who want to raise the hand and maybe join the discussion, I hope I technically will be able to do that, to admit you. So let me see. No requests.
Oh, that means we have to do the talking.
We have to do the talking.
Okay.
Sorry, that's you. I'm actually not surprised because aging is not a very popular topic, in the sense that, in my experience, people really do not want to talk about it. So I'm not surprised.
Yeah, that is a little bit our experience with the series, that especially when we come to talk about death, then the people disagree. But that
was our least popular show ever.
Yeah, but there's quite a bit of conversation here in the chat room, which I don't think you have, but there is also now a...
Yes, indeed.
Okay,
I can't see the chat, but I see the icon.
Yeah, I approved you, Roland, and I hope you have a way to come in, because this is a little bit experimental what we are doing now, this platform. So we will see what the outcome is.
Yeah. I'm sure Roland will do his best to come in.
Yeah, and you have to do all these technical rehearsals, if you have the camera on and all these things.
Okay.
We just go on a moment and...
Well, there is another technique I've heard a lot about. I think it's fairly common knowledge now. Telomeres and the role they play in aging. Has there been any recent research in that department that you know of?
Well, as far as I know, telomeres and telomere attrition, that is the wearing out of telomeres, is actually part of the hallmarks of aging article I was talking about. I'm not aware of what is the my understanding is that there would be many problems, or a number of problems, caused by telomere attrition. The only one that I'm aware of is the fact that your cells die when your telomeres are short enough. So there are approaches that aim to replenish telomeres to prevent this from happening, but that's sort of it could be a risky thing, because most cancers, that's how they actually replicate and survive. What happens with cancer in a nutshell is that there is an unlucky mutation, or a set of unlucky mutations, that allow cells that are not supposed to do so to use the telomerase enzyme that allows them to replenish their telomeres, and they just keep growing exponentially. So that's kind of a potentially dangerous thing, I'm guessing, to play around with telomerase to replenish your telomeres. But then there are other classifications, for example, that by Aubrey de Grey of Sense Foundation, that doesn't really list this as a problem, in the sense that, sure enough, cell loss is a problem that happens also because your cells lose their telomeres and they stop replicating, but that would be obviated with stem cell infusions, according to the Sense plan. There is nothing, as far as I'm aware, in the Sense platform that would be about prolonging the telomeres of existing cells. I don't know about other research projects. I only know that it is a hallmark of aging. It is considered to be one of them, one of the typical signs that something is going wrong with your body. The fact that telomeres are shortening.
Okay, I didn't know that. The cancer cells could take advantage of telomeres to.
That's the way. I mean, they can't live without that. I mean, there is another mechanism that is called ALT, stands for the alternative lengthening of telomeres. Essentially, it's another way that that cancer cells have to prolong their telomeres, but not much is known about it. We don't really know how it happens. And last year, if I'm not mistaken, there was a crowdfunding project again on lifespan.io to research this project, to this process. Sorry, that's what I meant. Research the process through which alt cancers prolong their existence, basically. Because at the moment it's not really known, and we don't know how to interfere with that. We don't really have news yet about any progress, but hopefully there will be news soon. I don't really know when. I saw another hand raised.
Yeah, I have admitted her, and I hope she makes it, because Roland couldn't make it. He said he had tech problems. So.
Somebody else's turn.
Maybe it would be more convenient if they just type their questions, because it might be.
Yeah, there is a lot typed. For instance, let me see, to go back, there was. Let me see. How do you see consciousness?
Sorry.
Consciousness. Where was that?
Question about consciousness?
Yes. How do you define human consciousness? Is it? But I have to go down, because here was a lot of comments.
A lot of them, yeah.
That was unexpected.
Sure.
Here, Margareta, she is coming. I'm still looking for this comment. I will find it. I see there is many others, but I just had in mind
questions
this
about
one.
consciousness are bound to creep into
what you said
issue.
before.
Sure,
no?
And I'm taking as kind of an in-between question, sort of social question.
Oh, here it is.
Okay, go ahead.
Heidi and Mark, what does your guest say is the definition of life? He seemed to discount soul or spirit. So what is life? The difference between a body that is alive and same body that is dead. Is it energy? Is it consciousness, a chemical process in the body? What is his definition? What is your definition of life, obviously?
Well,
what I'm hearing.
Biologically speaking, life is that, you say that an organism is alive when, at some point it starts existing, it grows, it can reproduce. There is a set of features that it needs to have. Now I can't remember all of them. I recently read, as I said, I started studying biology. One of the first things that they tell you is what is the definition of life according to biology, indeed. But my understanding is that it's a bit of a matter of definition, indeed. Some properties are ambiguous, meaning that if you only consider those properties, you could say that fire is alive because it starts, it grows, it reproduces, and it can die. So fire could be alive according to some definitions. I don't really have a definition on my own of life. I'm mostly interested in consciousness and whether or not something that is alive is aware of itself, which is, a warm can on its own, because it's difficult to define awareness as well. For example, a bacterium is alive, all right, but I have a hard time believing that a bacterium suffers or has thoughts or dreams or anything like that, because it's just one cell. It's not complicated enough to have a thought process. It does not have a brain or anything like that. So a bacterium is alive, but there is nothing much to care about it because it doesn't suffer. So it's not important in that sense. But what I care about are living beings that can suffer and have problems or think and have emotions. I don't really know. I can't answer for a fact if, there are souls or anything like that. I know that I don't believe in it, but ultimately, I don't find that it is an important question, because if there is something like a soul or a spirit or whatever you might call it, and it is such that you can't interact with it and, it's not biological, then we cannot really do anything about it. It's something we cannot interact with. So it's sort of an important question to ask. We can't change it. if it is like that.
Many of your viewers would contradict you. They would say that you can interact with it, and that you that's what I think. He might be young. Because when in your age, I talk like you, and a little later.
You'll see, young man. Just you wait.
A little later, I understood there is a little bit more to life than only scientific facts and only biology. There is quite.
But I don't see it that way. Don't get me wrong. I mean, like, I'm not one of those people who can't see the beauty of things because I don't know. You can look at a sunset and you could analyze it from a scientific point of view, or you could just be like, oh, that's really beautiful. I mean, the two aspects are not mutually exclusive. All I'm saying is that things like souls and spirit, by definition, are not something that you can tamper with biologically. So it doesn't really matter in the context of biology. Then, if there is such a thing, it's not like you can do anything with it biologically. So it wouldn't be influenced by anything it is that we do with our biology.
Sure, and this is what I tried to say at the beginning. We're talking in integral theory. We have the outside quadrants and the inside quadrants, and both have different ways of knowing and different ways of research. So you cannot research your interiority with measuring facts. That's just not. You can feel into your feelings, for instance, or go into your, in meditation, go into different spaces of consciousness, which you cannot really, you can see something which is changing in your brain.
They can put electrodes on your head.
And you see something.
Yeah,
but our teacher, Ken Wilber, says always, you can see from the scientific view that somebody thinks, that there are processes going on in the brain. But if you want to know what they think, you still have to ask them. You cannot see it from observation.
As a matter of fact, the researchers have come pretty close doing that, and it is possible to. I mean, I've read several times about research projects. Researchers figuring out what people were thinking. Of course, in limited detail for now, without asking the patient undergoing the experiment. But I mean, this is a different matter. Like, in my opinion, what is important to realize about this whole thing about rejuvenation and aging and so on and so forth is that we're talking mainly about one thing, and that is health. I do not know anyone who actively wishes to be sick at any age. I mean, you can ask around and, when would you like to have heart disease or Alzheimer's or cancer or even poor eyesight? No one is going to say, oh, yeah, I would like to have that tomorrow. Or in 20 years, I really hope I'm not going to be able to hear anymore. And that's all what we're talking about. Then people can have their beliefs, their spirituality. I don't question that. That's not my place to do. But what I would like is that everyone has an option to say, I want to be healthy. So if I want to be healthy, there are therapists that keep me healthy no matter how old I am. I don't think it's fair that just because one is 90, for example, has to be sick. So there's a lot of people who think, oh, well, they've had their life, they're 90. What kind of argument is that? Why do they have to be sick because they're 90?
I'm sorry. I have to jump in at this point because we're getting to the end. And there's one question I'm wanting to ask, and it has... Again, it's a little off-center as far as the approach we've been talking about. And that is, what the hell is society going to do with all these old people collecting Social Security and old age pensions? Who's going to do the work? I mean, that's far
polemic.
That's polemic. But
no, it's not.
This is going to change society. If we have people living a lot longer, what are they going to do with their lives? This is going to change so much of what we consider normal life is.
Yes, I'll try to make the best of the 6 minutes more or less left to answer your question. And as you said, if we extend our healthy lifespans, society is going to change. So first of all, you would not have a bunch of people getting their pension from the moment they hit age 65 onwards, for a very simple reason. The reason why you get a pension is that you're not able to work anymore. Not because, we send you on a holiday for the rest of your life. So you can actually continue working. You can try a new career or continue the one that you already have carried out thus far if you like it. And I do think that it would be sensible that, say, that you work 30 years in a certain line of work and then you want to have a holiday. So you have a few years off as a pensioner, like you get a pension, and then you can start over, which would be much more convenient for the state than just paying you until the day you die, because you just have a few years off and you get a pension and then you go back to work and you produce wealth. So there is an incentive for states to pay for your treatment, because then you will be a productive citizen, if we want to talk about that aspect. And I don't think that so some people would say that after I worked for 40 years, why would I want to continue working? Then my answer to that is, mate, you are in the wrong line of work. If you don't like what you're doing and you've been doing it for 40 years, that's not good. And I understand that there is, it's not always easy to be in the line of work that you like. It has been harder in the past. But I think the signs are clear that we are approaching an age where work can actually be something that we like and we enjoy, especially thanks to the rise of automation. And I think that one should strive to do what they like. So, if you have a longer life, try to spend it doing what you like. It's still a better option than death, if you ask me. There is a fantastic quote by Dr. Brian Kennedy. He is a biogerontologist, that is a person who studies the biology of aging, who said that, what's going to happen when we are 150? Maybe we're going to be bored, right? Maybe we are. But he says, if you ask me whether I want to have Alzheimer's disease when I'm 70 or cancer when I'm 80 or being bored at 120, I know which one I'm going to take. Implying that he'd rather be bored when he's 120 than being sick when he's 80. And I think it makes perfect sense. I mean, imagine a person my age, for example, and say that they've been bored for a few years straight. You don't recommend them to die, right? You're like, sure, you'll find something you like. And I don't see why it would make any difference when you're 80.
Yeah, there's a lot of comments here. And Roland says, retirement occupations will abound. And Vivek says, robots do the work. And most of us pensioners live. To you, he says that.
Thanks.
And Gina says, women boomers are becoming entrepreneurs. And it's exactly what you say. We might have much more the possibility of doing what we like. And what we like is what we are doing just now.
Right now. Exactly.
For example.
We like to do.
Yeah, but we need the pension because this doesn't pay.
Yeah, no.
Yeah,
it doesn't pay.
But
No.
You could make it bigger.
Okay, we will see where we land when we have the 200,000 people watching us live, like Joe Rogan.
Oh yeah, right, Joe Rogan. Okay. Well, this has been. Yeah, that would be nice. Yeah. So I don't know. We're coming to the end. Is there any final remarks? Oh gosh. Gina saying anything? Women boomers are becoming entrepreneurs.
I have already read that.
Yeah, I was hoping to see something new up there.
Alzheimer's.
Okay.
By the way, we have a friend who is swearing that coconut oil is helping him for Alzheimer's, and he is much more clear. And low carb diet. We shouldn't speak about that at all. Yeah, but next time. Okay.
All right.
Sure.
Any final remarks?
Something which you really want to put an accent on, and you want to leave your people with that. Okay.
Very simple thing. Very simple thing. Being sick is not fun. As you grow older, your chances of being sick go up dramatically, and you don't want to have that. So I would invite everyone to consider this problem and joining the cause. Being active, or not necessarily as an advocate as I am, because maybe not everyone is cut for that. But I don't know, talk to your friends, talk with people whom you know about the problem of aging and the chance that we might have to solve it. And to educate yourself on the topic, you can visit the Life Extension Advocacy Foundation website, which is leafscience.org. I also have an advocacy website, but it doesn't really matter. Maybe it's in the links. You can put it there because the address is quite long, so I'm not going to go there.
Okay.
this is what I want people to think. Diseases are bad, and the diseases of aging are the worst. There is a chance we might be able to avoid them. Let's do it.
Okay.
All right.
That's a good message.
Good way to end. Exactly.
Yeah. So thank you very much, everybody in the audience. I'm really glad that you came that you spoke between each other and also to us. And we have to continue the conversation, and we will do that next week. And we will have the exact opposite. We will have somebody who is talking about healing with body-mind practice. So with meditation, probably, with martial arts, Tai Chi, Qigong, and we will see what he has to say. And it's good that everybody has a different idea, because if everybody did the same thing, how boring would be that? And also how
and how partial it would probably be.
Exactly. Yeah. So getting it all together, how wonderful.
Okay.
So thank you very much. And everybody in the rooms.
You bet, Nicola.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I will stop somehow the recording.
Yeah. How do we stop? Push that button.
We will see that.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.